Hi, everyone. We're going to give it just 1 second to let everybody get in and get connected to the audio, and then we'll get started in just a minute. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started as folks are joining the room. Thank you so much for being with us today. My name is Whitney White. I'm from the University of Cincinnati's Parent and Family Programs Office. We're hosting this event today, and we're so glad that you joined us to learn a little bit more about everything financially related here at the University of Cincinnati. We have some of our best experts from campus with us today, and we're super excited for them to share this information with you. We're going to jump right in. We have folks from several different offices, so we'll do some introductions. But if you have questions, anything at all, drop that into the chat. We're going to get through the presentation first, and then we'll have a chance to ask questions at the end, but please feel free to put those in. We'll also share contact information for all of the presenters at the end. So if you have something really specific to your student that you want to ask, the best thing might be to reach out to them later to get that question answered. But general questions are great and give everybody the chance to learn from that question. So feel free to put those in. But we're going to jump right in. So as I said, I'm Whitney White. I'm the director of our office, Parent and Family Programs. I have been at the university for 5 years, love working with families. And if you're not familiar with our office, we provide year-round support for families. Everything from a support line and email where you can contact us at any point with any questions that you have, to engagement opportunities like our family weekend, for example, is our signature event each year. And then we also provide information for families. So if you're not a member of our family portal, which I'll put some information in the chat about that, we would love for you to join our family portal. That's a great way to find out about all things you see, including financial matters. So that's a little plug for our office, and I'll pass it over to my counterpart, Diamond Montgomery, to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Diamond Montgomery. Sorry for my screen name being wrong. I can't change it right now. But I currently serve as a program manager in our office. And I'm really excited to be here today. Thank you all for joining us. I love the fact that you are able to join, whether you're at work, at home, in your car, or wherever you are located. Please don't hesitate to reach out or connect with me anytime. And then we'll, go ahead and get started here shortly with our campus experts. So thanks so much for being here today.
Hey everybody, thanks for being here. My name is Sydney Myman. I am here to talk to you guys today from our OneStop Student Service Center. Just to give a little background, because it's not always super clear what OneStop is. We're sort of the one stop for student business matters. So we're the office that you'll come to, or your student will come to, with questions on financial aid, billing, or some registration and records related matters. So we'll dive into that when we get started, but just a little background on our office and who I am today. Excited to talk with everybody.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lee Jackson. I'm the Bursar here at University of Cincinnati, and our office is responsible for, creating student bills, collecting payments, and working with you on payment plans and other matters like that.
All right, and Carl, I think Carl just joined the meeting. So we'll let him introduce himself as we get to this part of the presentation. But for now, we'll kick it off with Sydney being our first presenter. So today we're going to talk about the role of the OneStop office, which is an essential place for your student to get all sorts of business needs completed in one place. Financial aid, university housing, the timeline for billing and how the bill looks, and everything you need to know in regards to that. And then next steps. So what does your student need to be thinking about right now? So I'm going to pass it over to Sydney, and you can take it away.
All right, sounds good. I should be able to go to the next slide. There we go. Okay, so as I mentioned, the One Stop Center, like I said, it's not always incredibly clear exactly what the role of the One Stop is, but the things that we're going to talk about today, financial aid, some of the kind of billing basics, our office is here to answer those kind of frontline questions and help get questions answered on those. So let's go ahead and dive in. First thing we're going to talk about is financial aid types. So what your student might be seeing as a part of their, we call it their financial aid award offer. So a part of that, what they might be seeing. So scholarships, pretty straightforward. Generally, these are merit-based funds. They do not have to be repaid. Your student could be seeing scholarships from the institution, so directly from University of Cincinnati, maybe seeing them from their individual department here at UC, so the College of Arts and Sciences or the biology department, or they could be coming from outside organizations. So that could be your community organizations, religious groups, things like that. The big thing on scholarships is just to notify our office if you've got outside scholarships coming in, because some financial aid might need to be adjusted depending on the amount of those scholarships. So just to make sure that if you've got a scholarship check coming in the fall and you know your student's going to be here, make sure that our office is aware so we can make those adjustments as early as possible. Grants, these are need-based funds, meaning they are awarded based on financial need as determined by the FAFSA. We're going to talk about the FAFSA in just a second, but generally these are not repaid. They could be federal, state, or directly from UC. Federal work study is a little bit different from the other two. They are need-based funds, so they are awarded based on that financial need determined by the FAFSA. But these are funds that are earned through employment. So the student essentially would look at getting an on-campus job. There are some opportunities where students can work off campus with maybe a nonprofit, but to the student, it looks just like a regular paycheck, but it makes them that much more enticing to the department to be able to bring them on board as a student worker. So just something to think about if you're seeing the federal work study funds available. Loans. Pretty straightforward. Loans are loans, but essentially these are borrowed monies that do have to be repaid. We say usually after graduation because the grace period does kick in when a student drops below half time. So for an undergraduate student, generally 6 credit hours or more is considered half time. So for most of our traditional students, they're attending at least half time. They'll be all right as far as that goes to not kick into their grace period or loan repayment. But just to keep in mind that that's one of the pieces with loans. For students, there might be subsidized, unsubsidized, or maybe private student loans that they would look into. And then there are some parent loans where the parent serves as the loan borrower. That's a Parent Plus loan, or it could be a private parent loan. So just something to keep in mind that those are a few options on loans. So at this point, if you've got a new student that's coming in for the fall 2022 semester in August, your student should have received something that looks like this. This is their 22-23 financial aid offer. So this would have come in an email. If you haven't seen it yet or you can't find it, no worries. You can still get back to this information in the student's new Bearcat portal, and we can drop the link for the Bearcat portal in the chat so that students can quickly get into that so you guys can review it together. We're going to dive a little closer into what each of these sections looks like so you can see it just a little bit better. But essentially, this is what they've got available to them as far as financial aid is concerned. So the top portion, you're going to see all the financial aid that's offered. So for this student, for example, this student has a few grants, they've got some loans, they've got work study. Off to the side, there's some little videos that kind of explain the differences. What is a Pell Grant exactly? How does work study work? That sort of thing. So this is a really good tool to take a look and check out. Cost of attendance, you're also going to see on there. You're going to see it's essentially altogether what it would cost for the student to attend University of Cincinnati. Now, that doesn't mean that is your bill. So Lee, in just a little bit, is going to go over the student bill and kind of that timeline of when you're going to see the student's official bill. This is basically just an estimate of all the costs that it might be. So you can see on here direct costs, things like tuition, and if your student is living on campus, but then you also see indirect costs like books, miscellaneous expenses. So for your student, it might not be those exact numbers, but it just gives a good estimate estimate on those types of things. Transportation, you know, obviously your student might be spending a little bit more, maybe spending a little less, but we just factor all those things in because that's how you would use financial aid to cover things like a parking pass, you know, things in addition to tuition and fees. You're also going to see additional options listed here to get the cost covered. So if you're looking at your student's award and you're thinking, okay, all I'm seeing is loans, what do we do next? These give you some options. And like I said, that's something we could talk with you one-on-one with your specific situation. But these really give you some options on how you might get that bill covered. Maybe it's a Parent Plus loan, maybe it's a private loan, maybe it's a payment plan. Maybe you have a college savings fund, you know, that sort of thing. And then you'll see our contact information on there as well. So before your student attends orientation this summer, what are some of the things that the student is going to need to take care of? I'm going to go over those really quickly before we jump into housing content. So before the student attends orientation, the Bearcat portal is really going to be the first place for new students to start with all the tasks that need completed. So there's a to-do list of sorts in there. Make sure you take a look at that. Don't just ignore it. If something is confusing or unclear, absolutely reach out. Our office is a good place to start with questions like that. And if we don't have the answer, we can certainly help you find it. But that Bearcat portal to-do list is the first place to begin. Review and accept any financial aid. So if you know your student's going to be here, we're going to accept the free financial aid on your behalf. So things like scholarships, grants, we're not going to make you take action on those. But if you do want to or need to take student loans, that is something that the student will need to accept. So just keep that in mind. There's a process called verification. So not to dive too deep into the weeds, but if you do see some items on that Bearcat portal tasks tile, some of those can impact the financial aid from processing. So you may see that we're requesting additional documentation like student taxes or parent tax information. You haven't done anything wrong, so don't be alarmed if you're seeing those kinds of items requested. Big thing is just to make sure you get those into us as soon as possible so you don't have any delays on that financial aid processing. Waive student health insurance if you have coverage otherwise. So at the university, that health insurance is automatically applied. If you don't need it or you don't want it, you need to make sure to go in and waive that. So just keep that in mind. You'll also see items like the financial agreement, direct deposit, if you're expecting a refund back, just like what we talked about, to use that financial aid for things like books. Financial aid authorization to let us know that the financial aid can post to the student bill to cover things like electronic books or, you know, a parking pass if your student gets one of those. And then delegated access is something to specifically point out for our parents and any guests that might be helping ask questions on behalf of the student. The student has a process where they can essentially delegate access to that parent or guest. So that person is going to get their own login so that they can log in, review the information provided. And it just really helps facilitate that conversation and help you have a better understanding of what's happening on your student's account. So if that's something you're interested in, as far as I understand, delegated access can generally be completed once a student confirms admission. But if you have any questions on the delegated access process, we can absolutely assist you with that. So just a little bit on the registration process. So I know we've had some questions already in our office about, you know, hey, I've confirmed, I'm ready to go, I've registered for orientation. When do I get to do my classes? So the first thing your student will need to do is attend orientation. There's a couple different pieces with orientation this summer. So if you've got questions on exactly what you'll be doing on each day, our orientation office is a good contact for that. But the student will meet with the academic advisor. And just to note that they'll discuss any concerns with the advisor at that time. So things like credit transferring in, things like that, that'll happen over the summer during the orientation process. And one thing we want to note is that dropping courses can impact a student's financial aid. So before classes begin, not a whole lot is happening with financial aid, but just to note that it's always good to have the student check with our office before they make changes to the schedule, especially after the classes have already started. Making some of those adjustments can impact what the student is eligible to receive. So that is it for my portion. I will go ahead and turn it over for our housing portion.
Thanks, Sydney. Good morning, everybody. My apologies for late arrival. Had to run and find a good space to do this morning. I've had a couple meetings back to back, but I'm happy to be here. Excited to talk to you all today. Again, my name's Carl Diesso. I serve as the Executive Director of Housing here at the University of Cincinnati, and get to talk about the thing that wakes me up in the middle of the night, in the morning, in the afternoon, is our housing processes in our program today. We're going to go through some of the business pieces. I can veer a little bit. We don't have a whole lot of time, so I won't veer completely into talking about the environment and what it's like on campus. We do have other information available on our website. There's other sessions that are available if you've looked at any of the admitted student days, and then certainly for orientation, where we get into much more detail about what daily life is like in the residence halls. But today's really meant to walk through the process and help you understand what's coming next. Sydney did a great job of directing you all to the portal, and that's really where we want you to start. I know we use our portal word in here as well. There's a series of portals around the university. It's because as we've migrated everything really over the last decade, the new portals are bringing, one portal to rule them all. It's bringing them together here. But as we've migrated everything into the digital realm, we've got to have you in the right space so that the applications flow correctly and move through. And that's really where we start our conversation today, is the application process. So at the University of Cincinnati, the housing application is only open to admitted and confirmed students. So you have to cross that threshold with the institution, apply for admission, receive that back, and then confirm back to us that you're becoming a student. The reason we do that is because there is a contract associated with this. It's different than the academic contract. It's different than the engagement of the academic pursuit. Here you're signing a contract for actual room, for a time frame, and specific services. So because we do that in a digital space, we need the student to be able to authenticate who they are. And so that confirmation of the institution then creates your digital identity with the university. Within the Bearcats portal, or from our housing website, which is real simple to get to, it's uc.edu/housing. There's a space that says apply, or in the Bearcats portal, it comes up as one of the automatic steps. But it will link you over to the space where you can actually complete the housing application. As you can see here, we break our process down into 3 parts. There's the first part here, phase 1, which is telling us your intent and getting in line. Part 2 is telling us a little bit more about what you're interested in: living, learning communities, roommates, roommate groups, places on campus. And then part 3 is when all the magic happens at phase 3 there, when we actually get in for room selection and the nitty gritty about getting yourself ready to move into campus. So along the way, we'll have videos available. We have instructions available, but we start today at phase 1, and we're actually at a point, as you can see on the schedule here, into phase 2. So I said you needed to be confirmed so that you have a login credential, and that's what you'll need in phase 1. The application, we make it pretty simple. It's just a couple screens. You're going to validate some demographic information, make sure the university has correct name, correct contact information, correct emergency contact info, and you'll get a copy of the housing contract at that point in time. Your student will actually do that because that's who we want to go through the process. That document can be viewed online. It's on our website. You just, again, uc.edu/housing under resources, or under the apply section. You can get to the terms and conditions if you want to read that ahead of time. But you'll actually get a copy there to read. The student will initial it. For any students that are under the age of 18, so that this can be a legal contract, they'll actually put a parent or guardian's email address in, someone to serve as a guarantor that they are reading the document, and we'll make sure the student is aware of those terms. And then the last thing there in that process to make it simple is we've lumped that up to confirm your intent. There is a small application fee. It's non-refundable. It's $75. That's per student for every academic year that they apply for housing. There is no other deposit. There's no other fee that comes later other than the actual billing of the room and board when it hits your student's account. Whitney, let's go ahead and go to the next one. So where are we now? We opened up phase 1 as soon as the admissions offers became available. It does take, just so everyone's aware, it does take about 48 hours from the time you say yes to UC and confirm your admission to when your credentials get created and you can actually get into the housing system. So that's unfortunately not a real-time process, but it happens pretty close within 2 days. So you just want to keep that in mind, that you will need to come back. And that's part of the reason that we've also chunked out phase 2 in this process is so that people can accomplish those tasks in a very quick short time frame, and think about the things that really mattered. So phase 2 is about telling us more. 1 is just a decision. Am I interested in living on campus? Phase 2 gets down to when you're going to do a little research and actually have to do a little homework, or your student will have to do a little homework. And that's about the living environment. So we've got a number of locations available, and you can see on our website the different communities that students can live in. And for me, that's one of the great things about UC and our housing program is we do not track students to any one place. So we want you to read about everything, learn about all our facilities, and what options are going to be best for you. We have everything from traditional residence halls, where that's where your student's going to get the shower every morning with 40 of their closest friends, to the other end of the spectrum, where it's a private apartment, private bedroom, private bathroom, so very secluded places. So you're going to think about, and they're going to think about what they need to be successful right away, and how that transition may transition over time. What do you need in year 1 versus year 2, 3, and 4? Left to their own devices, we know students would opt for the most extreme situation. Many of them go towards the private bedroom, private bathroom. Naturally, when you get into that kind of environment, that adjusts the price, and that may change things for your budget. We've got our Bursar here to talk to you a little bit about financing the program. So take a look at all those, ask questions. There's benefits to each environment. They're unique for each student. What I will tell you when you're making those decisions is the name of the game in living and housing is connection and community. And when they get into a space that's more isolated, you all know your students the best. How likely are they to go out and make friends and create community? Yes, they are walking to class. Yes, they're going to eat. Are they the type of person that would talk to somebody at class and go join them for lunch? Or are they going to be on their own? And that's really where the difference, the trade-off in the styles come from in the different communities that we have available. When you look at a traditional residence hall where it's more open, the bathroom is centrally located, it's commonly referred to as a more social environment. And really what that means is your student's going to learn more individuals, names of more individuals, get to know more people than if they're in a room where they're behind a door and don't really ever need to leave from behind that door. So some of the ways we enhance that opportunity, that social environment, is this part 2 here. In living learning communities is another way and another add-on. There's no additional fees for it. It's a natural part of our program. And really what they do is that brings the academic environment to the residential community. So it's closely working with the different colleges and programs. And how do we create extended learning opportunities? We know it happens, but how do we do that in an intentional way? Those living learning communities are not required for everybody. So it's something you would want to consider and look at. Again, you can get the details on our website of the different ones that are offered. But what they do is, because there's limited space, there is an application process. And that's what you would do here in phase 2, is prepare a few small essays. Your student would do this, prepare a few small essay answers for consideration, so that they can get themselves into those communities. They can apply for more than one. So if there's multiple interests, they don't need to select right away. They'll get their responses. You can see decisions by May 3rd, 4th, that time frame, and then they would confirm back in our housing portal where they actually want to be. If that's not where your student wants to be, they want to separate the academic space from their living environment, then your roommate group connecting with others is an important task. So they have the opportunity to create a profile for themselves. We ask a couple basic questions. So there is an online space for them to meet other students and meet other students that may answer questions similarly. Some of the big topics that we often see as sticking points for roommates is about smoking, it's about drinking, it's about study habits. Are you a person that stays up late versus gets up early? Those are some pretty significant living topics that you want to explore ahead of time and talk about ahead of time. And we'll get into this in the summer, where you'll hear from our colleagues in resident education and development. Those are the folks that are actually in the buildings and live there 24 hours a day. But when we talk about roommates, the big piece there is, it is important for you to be honest, for your student to be honest in completing these profiles. And we want to change the kind of stress point. A lot of folks can always be worried, and naturally so. They've never lived in a close space with someone else before, worried about what kind of roommate they're going to get. And I will tell you, so the change there that we ask is a mentality change of, worry less about what kind of roommate you're going to get and more about what kind of roommate you're going to be. Starting in role modeling and thinking about talking to your student about how they can be a good roommate to other individuals. How do they communicate things that frustrate them? Not picking up the clothes, taking out the trash, guests. We, again, have some intentional processes to work students through that. We'll do roommate compacts at the beginning of the year that help them set the ground rules. But that's really this part two. And I will say, it is okay. It is 100% okay if your student doesn't want to go through and create a roommate group. We find equal success and equal satisfaction from students that really just take the luck of the draw and are going in to be in a specific building and are comfortable with different roommates. Again, it's that mentality of going into it. Make sure that you're being the best Bearcat, the best roommate that you can be, and our staff is there to help them work through. Again, here we've got some process videos. There's opportunities to tour residence halls, certainly during the admitted Bearcat days. There's very limited opportunities during the academic year, just because our students they're in the spaces. So we need those rooms, but we do have some videos available, and our staff is always available in the housing office. We're there Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. You can call in, you can email us. We make it a point every day. If you've called in, you've gotten in our queue, the staff stays until all calls are returned. So you should get a call back the same day. Whitney, we'll jump over to the next one, please. I talked a little bit about the types. You see the traditional halls there, and those are the facilities where students typically in a two-person unit. When you look at our rate chart and you to understand the different room types that are available, we separate things by two factors. One is the style of unit. So you see traditional suites, junior suites, and apartments, and then the number of roommates. We either have a single occupancy space, which means you are the only person in that behind a door sleeping. Could be multiple single bedrooms in a unit, whether it's apartment or a suite or something. But again, behind that closed door, you are the only one there. The other then, if it's not a single, we just refer to it as multiple occupancy. So that could be 2, 3, or 4 people in a sleeping space. Again, those price points then vary by the style of hall and the amenities that are available. We talk traditional suite and a junior suite. I'll start with the junior suite first. Very simply, that is a bedroom connected to another bedroom by a bathroom. So that typically takes that bathroom ratio down to a 4-to-1. Jack and Jill is a term we often use to describe that. Folks have probably heard it from a traditional real estate environment where we've got those two bedrooms and a connecting bath. And then a suite would be a step up from that. That provides more amenity space, more really living room space within the unit. So in addition to the bedrooms, you now gain a living room. I always describe these as apartments without kitchens. That's the easiest way to think about it. And then of course, our apartment facilities is exactly what you would assume. We have everything from studios to 5-person units. On the top end of that, we've got units that are 2, 3, or 4 bedroom where they all have private bathroom, and trying to work through a spectrum of needs for families and students and what they're looking for to be successful. So that's something you'll want to take into consideration. Is I look at the socialization that happens. It's the greatest in the traditional halls and the least in the apartments. The apartments, honestly, is where we find our upperclassmen. They've already got their network set, their friend group set. They're really more about living here 12 months out of the year, being here over winter break. They've got jobs coming and going and need that more independent environment. I always encourage families to take a strong look at the traditional halls, a strong look at the suites and the junior suites. I think, there's plenty of time for your student to live in an apartment or live in a house off campus. They've got their life in front of them. This is really the one time where they can live in community, be with a large volume of friends in close proximity, and really get to know a lot of people and create a network. So isolation is never a good choice unless it's absolutely needed for a particular reason. You can see there in the rate charts, I know Lee's probably going to talk about the Cohort Guarantee a little bit. Fall 22 admits, that's who we're talking to. People that are coming in this upcoming August are part of the 22-23 cohort. So that's the pricing you'll want to look at. We have a note down there, Calhoun's closed for renovations. We're working through our master plan. We'll have some more details to come later in the spring about halls that'll be changing into next year and beyond, so that you can make educated choices when we get to that selection process. Thank you very much. I know questions may come in. I'm happy to answer them. Again, our office is here Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., 513-556-6461, or uchousing@uc.edu. Thank you very much. Lee, they're all yours.
Thanks, Carl. Yeah, I will talk a little bit about our tuition guarantee along with some other things. But first thing, because we are starting to get questions from incoming families about this, is when am I going to get a bill? When can I see the bill? So we will make your bill available in Catalyst through the Bearcat portal early to mid-June. So that's our timeline for this year. Sometimes it's a little bit later, depending on some factors with the state of Ohio. How much we're allowed to charge for tuition is partially based on state regulations. So sometimes we have to wait on the state legislature to make some decisions. This year, we'll be able to get those bills out shortly after students start registering for fall semester. Financial aid will start to post on the bill beginning August 12th. So for all federal financial aid, we're not allowed to disperse that aid to students more than 10 days before the term starts. So we just disperse everything at the same time in that 10-day time frame. As soon as financial aid posts, if your students are expecting financial aid refunds to use it for their living expenses and other things, those will start on August 12th as well. We do not hold, I know a lot of schools wait until the end of the second week of classes to start issuing expense checks to students. We don't do that at UC. We'll start to send out refunds right away once financial aid is posted. So because we know a lot of families are using financial aid to pay all or part of their bill, we don't make the student bill due until after financial aid posts. So we'll send you a bill in June. You don't need to worry about paying that right away. You've got until August 17th to figure out those finances and for the financial aid to post, and then the student bill will be due on August 17th. And then classes will start on August 22nd. And as Sydney mentioned, once a student starts their classes, if they're going to make registration changes, those will have financial aid impacts, but they'll also have billing impacts. So I want to make sure to talk to our OneStop to make sure that they understand that their academic choices are going to change their student bill. So here's a number that I can share with you. Our Board of Trustees voted last month to approve tuition for the 22-23 tuition guarantee cohort. And so what I've got showing here is the in-state tuition numbers just for students. So for an Uptown campus student, that'll be $65.88 per semester. For a Blue Ash student, $33.95. And for a Claremont student, $31.82. So if a student is non-resident, so out-of-state student, either paying the full out-of-state charge or is qualified for our metro rate, they will have an additional out-of-state fee. And we can talk about those things if you have questions about out-of-state fees and all of that. This tuition rate will be guaranteed to your student for 4 years or 5, depending on the length of their program. So if it's a student in a co-op program in DAP or College of Engineering, that's a 5-year design program, they would get this rate guaranteed for the full length of their program. So if your student stays full-time, finishes on time, they're never going to see a tuition increase at UC. So that's something that we've put in place a few years ago. The tuition guarantee program also covers their housing rate. So whatever their rate is for the 22-23 housing cohort, that's the rate that they'll be guaranteed throughout their time at UC. Now, if they make a different housing choice the next year and choose a more expensive one, they will pay more than their freshman year, but it will still be the 22-23 cohort rate for that housing. So what I'm showing you here, again, doesn't include all of those other fees. This is just sort of the base tuition at UC for the year. There are a lot of different things that can go into what the final bill will be at UC. I will be honest with you, we have kind of a complicated tuition structure compared to some of our peers. And then we also put a lot of other charges on the bill for the students so that they don't have to pay them separately. So there's a new student fee the first time they enroll that's going to cover their orientation costs and some other programming throughout the fall semester. Some programs will have a program fee. So DAP is one example. Students have a lot of materials that they'll need to complete their program in DAP. Instead of making students purchase those materials separately, a lot of those are rolled into a program fee. So a student might have an additional program fee on their bill. Whether you're in-state or out-of-state is going to make a difference. Out-of-state students, because the state of Ohio doesn't provide UC with a a subsidy for instruction for students that are out of state. We do charge more for that. So that'll have an impact on the bill. Whether the student's full or part-time, if a student's between 12 and 18 hours, we just bill a flat rate. But a student that takes less than 12 hours will pay a per credit hour charge. So if you're at 9 hours versus 10, there's going to be a difference in cost there. If a student's a co-op student, when they're on their co-op terms, there is a small co-op fee that they'll pay, but it's much less than tuition. So that'll have a billing impact. If a student is in overload, so if a student's a real go-getter and taking more than 18 hours in a semester, then they'll have an additional charge on top of that full-time charge. Carl talked about the different housing options. UC has a lot of different great options for students for housing, and they do have different price points. So which housing a student selects will have an impact on the bill. Similarly, which parking a student chooses. That parking is another item that we go ahead and put straight on the student bill rather than making students pay for separately. So which parking garage a student picks will have an impact on the bill. And for a lot of our courses, especially for first-year students, we provide ebooks as part of their tuition charge. So they'll have an ebook charge if their course is going to have an electronic book they'll have access to upon registration. So Sydney talked a little bit about, we're estimating your costs, and for a lot of families, there will be a cost left over after financial aid has posted, especially if you're not choosing to use loans to pay for school. So we've got a lot of different options that students can do to take care of their bill. So obviously you can make a personal payment. We encourage you to pay online. You can pay either with credit card or with an e-check. We definitely would encourage you to pay with an e-check if you can, because that does not have an additional fee attached to it, a credit card payment. The credit card vendor charges a fee, and that does get passed on to the student. You can make a payment in person. All of our campuses have places where you can drop off a check, or you can mail in a check, and that's totally fine too. You can use your 529 or other college savings plan if you've got one of those. The best thing to do is talk to your provider about the process for getting payment to us. All of them will have a little bit of a different process. So talk to them early about when they want to have your request in to make sure that it can get paid by the time the bill is due. UC does offer a tuition payment plan where you can take the semester amount that you have due after financial aid and pay it over 3 installments. So for fall semester, those will be due in late August, late September, and late October. A lot of families choose to use a Parent Plus loan for covering additional costs that aren't covered by the student's financial aid, or a private student loan or private parent loan. And those are all, right now, interest rates are still relatively low. I know that they're looking to go up in the next year, but right now, student loans are a pretty good bargain interest rate wise. So if you want to take a look at those options, you can definitely do that. And OneStop, again, can certainly help you with that. So your next steps, make sure that if you haven't done so already, to go ahead and complete your FAFSA. I know a lot of families think they're not going to get anything but loans. You never know until you complete the form. So you can definitely take a look at that and see what you might be eligible for. Search for scholarships. Once a student's in Catalyst, they're able to click on a scholarship search tile that's in their profile, and they'll be able to essentially fill out a little form about themselves, and it'll try to match them to scholarships that we know about or that UC offers. So that's a really great tool to try to find additional funding for college. Remind your students to keep an eye on their Bearcat portal. Make sure that they're taking care of tasks. That portal is going to be dynamic. So as things change on a student's record, there may be additional tasks that are added. So if a student accepts a loan, they're going to see prompts to complete their loan entrance counseling and their promissory note. And those wouldn't be there before they accepted the loan. So the student's choices as they go through the admissions process, the orientation process, might create additional tasks. So that's something that a student will just want to get in the habit of logging in every day and taking a look just to make sure there's nothing else that they need to take care of. Remember, as Sydney talked about, not all of your costs for college are going to be direct costs. So think about indirect costs. So the financial aid office will help you budget for those with estimated costs for the average UC student, but your costs may differ from that. So you may have a little bit higher, a little bit lower costs. And again, OneStop is certainly happy to help you as you walk through and talk through all of the different scenarios about different housing, whether you have enough financial aid to cover certain housing choices, or whether you would want to use a traditional one based on the financial aid package that you've got. And then I know it's really early feeling to start thinking about fall of 23, but the FAFSA opens October 1st of 2020. Oh, that should say 2022. The FAFSA will open to get you ready for financial aid for the following year. All right, Whitney, back to you.
All right, so we do have some questions that kind of came in the chat. Can you tell us how does financial aid change from year to year?
Sure, sorry, I was bringing my camera back. Yeah, I can take that one. So a student will file a FAFSA, as Lee kind of outlined just recently. A student will file a FAFSA each academic year. There's a lot of things that are taken into consideration. Students' income, family's income, household size, number of students in college. There's a lot of things that go into that FAFSA to determine what a student's eligible for. So that's why the Department of Education has you do one each year, because what you're eligible for could change depending on those household items.
And to add to that, Sydney, there are some aid sources that you see that you will get every year as long as you meet certain criteria. So if your student was offered a Cincinnatus Award as part of their scholarship package, that will be a 4-year award for that student, as long as you keep the GPA where it needs to be to renew and all of those sorts of things. But to Sydney's point, all the need-based aid that UC allocates is established year to year based on the FAFSA.
All right, I can only see the questions that come in on mine. I don't know if any of the other campus partners have any, but I just wanted to make sure we get everyone's answer. But what about the PharmD 6-year program? Is that included in the tuition guarantee?
So the tuition guarantee program covers only undergraduate tuition. So that 6-year PharmD program, the undergraduate portion would be covered under the tuition guarantee, but once they move on to the PharmD graduate portion of the program, that tuition rate would get set each year by the Board of Trustees. So graduate tuition can change. We typically don't try to raise graduate tuition too often. I think we've actually only seen one across the board graduate tuition increase in the last 4 years. So we do, even for graduate students, try to make sure that things are as affordable as they can be. But a student may see a change in their graduate tuition after starting a graduate program.
Thank you. Can you match financial aid offers from other colleges or institutions?
So I can take that one. So we don't have a process for matching what another institution has provided. If you're unclear about what's being offered, or that you're feeling like there's something missing, definitely reach out to our office and we can talk one-on-one. That's the One-Stop Center that you see the information on the screen now. Definitely connect with us and we can review that with you, and maybe talk about other alternatives. As Lee mentioned, there are additional opportunities to apply for scholarships. There was one question that came directly to me about scholarship from an individual department, or how do we know? At this point, all of the scholarships have been awarded that came directly from the university. So that happened in February, late February at the latest. Now, the only caveat to that is CCM. Those do not get awarded until April. So if you do have a CCM student, just don't be alarmed that theirs have not come in yet. They have an additional process for that. But for everybody else, those have been awarded. So your student should have received some contact information, maybe an email, letting them know they're receiving that scholarship, and it should be on their financial aid award. But again, if you're not seeing that and you think you should, or something's unclear, absolutely check with us. Now, sometimes some of the ones coming from the colleges aren't officially out there on the award or that you're not seeing them in the portal until maybe later in the summer. But, don't hesitate to ask if something seems unclear. And then I had another question directly to me about student health insurance. That does need to be waived each academic year. So just keep that in mind. That'll pop up on your students' tasks that they need to complete in their portal. So yeah, that's something they do need to do each year.
Thanks, Sydney. I had 2 questions that came in. Actually, a third one just popped up. The first one was orientation. Is that for students and or parents and families? And I can answer that. Families are invited, or guests, whoever the student wants to bring with them, to the orientation sessions. And there's a specific program for families and guests and supporters at the orientation session so that you get all the information you need and have opportunities to ask any questions that you might have. Another question, any suggestions for other financial help for out-of-state students?
As far as financial aid is concerned, I can take that one from a financial aid lens. So as Lee mentioned, there is an additional cost for students coming from out of state. That'd be something we probably want to review one-on-one with you to talk about what you're already offered, what the additional cost might be. But it might be a combination of things. It might be a combination of what Lee mentioned with the tuition payment plan, if there's any money in college savings, or our next best option might be to consider a student loan or a parent loan. So that's kind of the track, at least that I would take if we were having that conversation one-on-one, but it's best really to talk with us so we can see what you've got and kind of what we need to make up with for what needs covered.
Thanks, Sydney.
Sure. I had a question come in directly to me about declining a loan that was offered. So we are not going to automatically accept student loans that are offered. So if your student hasn't done anything yet, then you don't have to do anything with it. If you see the loan and you're like, I'm not sure if we want to take it, or we know we don't want to, not a problem. You can just ignore it. If the student has accepted it, but wants to say, oh, actually, never mind, because I don't need it anymore, just connect with our office and we can help you resolve that.
Thank you. And one other question I have, this is for Carl. Can you talk a little bit about the resident advisor role and position and how that works with the cost of room and board?
Absolutely, absolutely. So when we use the moniker university housing, really what we're talking about is a broad network and a spectrum of services and offices that support the residential students. And one of those, and really one of the key ones at the middle of this, is our resident education and development team. And they're part of our division of student affairs. And really what they are charged with is enhancing the day-to-day experience in the residence halls. And I'm not talking about that they change the light bulbs and put in work requests, make sure the mail is delivered. What they're doing is a team that's there to support students 24 hours a day, 7 days a week during the academic term when everybody is here and engaged. And we do that through a couple levels. There are full-time professional staff members that live in our communities. We've got on-call rotations, but a majority of the work is deployed through our peer leadership team, and that's really the resident advisor. So those are upper class students that typically have had a residential experience prior and really want to give back to the community. So they've signed up. It's a campus job just like any other. In terms of the financial benefit to them, they're compensated with room and board and a small stipend to go with that for other services and duties that they perform. But they're there in every building. So that is the widest team and the most engaged team with students in their experience. And that's really the first place and the direct connection that we want students to go to. So they serve as guides. They're not hall monitors. They're not policy mongers. What they are there as guides to help students navigate the campus, make connections. They're having really intentional interactions with students. They're out talking to them, making sure students are getting to lunch. Are you meeting people? Have you gone to class? They're checking in, helping navigate roommate conflicts, all the kind of initial things before something would escalate, good or bad in any direction. They're there to engage and they're immediately available. We say that's the first connection for students. And then for parents and families, if they're looking to connect, that layer above then is the supervisory layer. And that's our full-time staff, our community coordinators. And then our communities are also grouped together a few at a time. And we call those neighborhoods or areas. And so there's another full-time professional above a number of those community coordinators. To give you a sense of where we are, I didn't talk about numbers in the housing program. Across our portfolio, we're anticipating a little over 7,000 students next year. And that's going to require us to have an RA staff well above 150 to make sure everybody has good access and is getting the attention they need. So that's a competitive process that starts in the fall semester, and selection then for the following academic year is ongoing right now. They're actually finishing up interviews and offers are being made here as we lead in and out of spring break.
Thanks, Carl. I got a couple more for you here. I'll tell you both and then you can answer both. The first one is are all UC dorms co-ed? And the second one is, if we don't commit until end of April, will that hurt our housing choices? And are we guaranteed a spot if we want honors housing?
Okay.
If you need me to repeat that, I will.
I mean, I did have one cup of coffee. I'm mostly alert today. I can work through. But I will probably need you to make sure I hit all the points in that second one. So let me answer the first one there, which now as I've talked, I've forgotten what it was. Let me just answer the second one about timing and honors, and then you can remind me that one. Clearly one cup wasn't enough. Sorry, everybody. So how does it work? Why is the application open now in phase 2 and phase 3 when selection happens? Right, you heard me say there's 7,000 students, and you have to think about this process like you would think about buying a plane ticket, concert ticket, and really the same logic applies to orientation and registering for classes. There is a finite number of spaces available in a building in a particular style. We don't play with it. We don't jump around. We don't try and shove 3 people in a 2-person spot. So there's a specific number. If you know you want to be in housing, we would encourage you to apply as early as possible. If you know you want to be in a very specific building and it's small, Schneider Hall is a perfect example. They're suites. They're all 4-person suites, but they're 4 private bedrooms. There's only 168 beds. That's a very small number relative to the 7,000 students that are living here. So it behooves you, if you're looking to get something where there's only a small amount available, you want to be in line as early as possible. What we do with the applications every week, those applications that are complete, so that means you've submitted and paid your fee, those are bundled and then randomized for a time slot. So the individuals that did it in week 1 are the first group that will get their time to come back in May and June and make their selection. So will it hurt your chances? It's tough for me to give you an exact answer to that. It depends on what you're looking for and how many people in front of you are looking for that same thing. But what I would say is if you have very specific needs that don't cross over into an accommodation, right? If you need an accommodation from the institution, that is a separate process. We have beds available to work with you uniquely to address those items. But, if you say I have 4 roommates or I have 3 roommates, we want to be in a 4-person unit and I need to face north and I need to be on this side of campus, right? That's very specific. You're going to want to get in earlier. We generally, students, I can tell you, as long as they've got 2 or 3 options available to them, in my 14, almost 15 years of being here, we have never had a situation where a student really just didn't get into one of their top 2 or 3 choices. It does require you to think about the trade-offs and what you're willing to work through, but we've never not been able to manage a room change and a process to get students in a place where they're comfortable. I think I remember the other question now is about co-ed, and that's a great question. So how we organize the rooms and the assignments is essentially around gender at the bedroom level and the bathroom level. So really it's at the bathroom level first. In traditional residence hall, you'll typically find 1 restroom facility, 1 bathroom facility per floor. There might be 2 per floor, but whatever that is the gender is around that space. So in Calhoun and Siddall, for example, there is 1 restroom facility per floor. We currently occupy that as a floor of men or a floor of women, right? So those roommates in that space, that is how that is organized. When the bathroom comes down to the suite level or the apartment level, the gender then is localized at that unit. So that means in a Turner Hall or Morgan's Hall, you could have a suite or an apartment of men living next to a suite or apartment of women. There are some spaces in our portfolio and through some of our living learning communities where there's mixed gender environments or all gender environments. It just, again, is depending on what you're looking for and how we can support your student. But again, the base assignment and the base logic there happens along those gender lines and where the bathrooms are located.
Thanks, Carl. And then the other piece of the other question around honors housing.
Oh, yes.
Are you guaranteed a spot if you try to go for honors housing?
Right. So how that works is we give different priority to groups. And when you look at the assignments, honors typically goes first for assignments, and then our living learning communities, and then other spaces. Do those individuals get to select anything they want? No. What it is they have priority to select the spaces within their population and the rooms that are available to them. So our honors guaranteed a space. Yes, we have enough space set aside for all honors students that want to be living in the honors community. If you want to be somewhere else, you would then go through the general room selection process outside of those learning communities and special themed areas. The guarantee that we offer is if students complete their application by our priority date, then we will guarantee you a space in the housing program. We will not take a housing application unless we know we have a space for someone. That makes for a really stressful summer for everybody involved, and that's not something that we want to put anybody in that position. So we guarantee if we take your application, we take your money, we have a space for you. And I think just like Sydney said, if you have questions, you have concerns when it comes to the assignment, we're happy to talk to you before, during, after our staff is available. On those days when we're having heavy selection processes going on, we typically staff later and our team is there to answer the phones and walk students through processes. That'll happen we run those in the afternoons. We're very conscious of where our incoming students are during the day when those processes are running. So they'll start in the afternoons into the early evening. So it's not competing with school time or trying not to compete with other events.
Thank you. Did anyone else, any of the presenters have any other questions that came in? We have about 3 minutes left.
Yeah, Whitney, I had a handful that came through direct to me. One was actually from Carl, and it should be pretty easy. When do students start moving in?
That is an easy one. We start in August. We'll have the dates. Move in August. Some people, you'd be surprised how many people call me and say, "Can I move my students sooner?" We're really ready for them to start, but we'll be ready for them in August. The semester, August or summer semester ends the first week. We'll need a week to clean rooms and get everything prepared. What you're going to see is a refreshed schedule. It's a little different than in past years. We are really focusing and trying to create a freshman move-in experience that is more closely aligned and tied to Welcome Week activities. So that Sunday and that Monday will be the primary periods. But there's other times during that week your student can arrive. There's some early arrival opportunities. If Sunday's not the right kind of day, we've got some chances there. There are required activities at the end of the week. So when you're looking at classes begin that Monday, the Lee or Whitney or Sydney, if anybody could help me with that date, it's escaping me at the moment.
22nd.
22nd, right? Thank you. So then that would be then the 14th, 15th would be those freshman days. There are some academic ceremonies and other activities that happen that Thursday, Friday, Saturday before classes begin. So really you're looking at that week before is when we'll get you in and get you settled.
And then I had a couple of questions that came to me about loan limits. And so one of them was, can we borrow more from the federal loans than what's listed on the offer? The answer to that is it depends on which kind of loan it is. If it's the student's subsidized loan, the financial aid office will always offer the maximum subsidized loan that a student is able to take based on their grade level. That is the best student loan to borrow. So the financial aid office obviously wants you to take that in full before you take anything else. Similarly, with the unsubsidized loan offer that's out there, that's typically the maximum amount that a student can take. One caveat to that is if you as a parent apply for a parent loan and are denied for any reason, a Parent Plus loan, then the financial aid office is able to offer some additional unsubsidized loan support. It may not be as much as you need because it's only $4,000 additional dollars for a freshman, but it can help. And then another question is, are there limits on Parent Plus loans and private loans? So the only limit on either of those two loan types is the annual cost of attendance set by the financial aid office. So the financial aid office does limit the Parent Plus loan to the maximum, like the total cap of what they think a student needs for financial aid for the year. But there's not a lifetime limit on the Parent Plus loan. So a parent can borrow a Plus loan more than once if they qualify for it year after year. Now, there is a credit check attached to that loan. So that is something that you'll want to take a look at as you go through the process. And then there was one other question about the CEAS, College of Engineering and Applied Science, master's program where they get the master's degree alongside the bachelor's. So the way tuition will work for students in that program is typically for their first 5 years while they're completing their undergraduate part of the program and their co-ops, they'll pay undergraduate tuition. What most students do in that program is add a graduate course on top of our full-time undergrad load during their fourth and fifth years in that program to help them complete half the master's degree before they actually start the master's program in year 6. So for those, as long as students stay on track and do it that way, they won't see any additional costs for the graduate portion of the program. If you're a full-time student and you're full-time undergrad, then you're going to pay undergrad fees. It gets complicated if a student's taking a combination of graduate and undergraduate courses. So if a student's in 6 hours of undergrad and 9 hours of graduate coursework in a semester, then in that semester, they're going to pay graduate tuition. So the way I mentioned before, UC's tuition structure is a little bit complicated. We're certainly happy to help with specific cases as you get to them. But you'll pay the rate based on essentially what program you're taking more of your coursework in a given semester. So if a student's in 7 or more graduate hours in a semester, they'll pay the graduate student rate instead of the undergrad rate. And again, just like with the question related to the PharmD program, the graduate tuition portion of the combination undergraduate and graduate engineering program is not part of the tuition guarantee. It's just the undergraduate tuition portion. And Whitney, I think that was my last direct question.
Great. Thanks.
I don't have any more over here either.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. And thank you to our fantastic presenters for sharing all the information about your areas and everything families need to know. There are our emails and phone numbers listed on the slide here for everyone. I also dropped the emails into the chat, so it's easier for you to grab those and copy them. But please don't hesitate to reach out. We are here to help make this process as easy on you as possible. So don't hesitate to call us, email us. Housing can help you with housing and the residential experience, and the OneStop can help you with these financial pieces, including Lee's team with the Bursar. But parent and family programs can help you with anything you see. So, even if something comes up beyond what we talked about today, always feel like you can reach out, call or email us, and we will help you get connected to the information that you need so your student can be successful. So reach out often. And thanks so much. And we will see all of you very soon. If you need to get any of this information again and you missed it today in the presentation, we did record it and we'll be sharing that on our website after it gets captioned. So that will take about a week. But if you want to reference it later, it'll be there for you. And give us a call if you have any trouble locating that. So thanks so much. Everyone have a great day.
Thank you.